Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the hopeful news that the government is about to drop its plans to freeze personal independence payments for those with disabilities, which would be a real terms cut. If so, and it seems all but certain now, very good news, although it will be interesting to see what the Treasury come up with instead. Hopefully something less stupid. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So it's been reported in a few outlets and even on some newspaper front pages today that Labour are going to drop the plans to freeze PIP, which is used to compensate people with disabilities for the extra costs they incur, which do not apply to the rest of us. This includes the extra cost of electricity to power machines that some may need to manage essential functions, may include the cost of extra transport needs to get to work. The fact that the government were even thinking about a freeze was ridiculous on so many levels. First and most importantly, at a time when everyone is aware we have a large working age population not in work, this was a barrier to working. If someone can't afford to travel to work because the costs have gone up with inflation but their payments have not, they won't be able to work. For one reason or another, this was all proving to be incredibly distressing for those who would be affected. That is why I'm putting this video out now, the very next slot after I heard the news. I know there are a lot of you out there who were getting distressed, and hopefully you've already heard. It has been headline news, but if not, important to spread the message as quickly as possible. As a disability campaigner said in one of the Guardian articles on this, since Labour got in, I've had to ease concerns because there's been talk of the cuts are coming, which then increases anxiety, and anxiety then causes stress, and stress causes relapses. And this has been my point for a very long time. Labour had never intended cuts, which is why there were no cuts in the October budget. It was obviously not their plan. They had announced savings, yes, but were not intended to make those savings from cuts or even restricted eligibility. And my argument since last summer is they should have said that. They should have said, yes, we're going to be looking to reduce the welfare bill, but it will not be by cutting payments for those who need them. But they didn't, and I didn't know why at the time. We do now. It's because they were obviously, although not intending to, prepared to go down that road if the finances got really tricky, which is not acceptable. As so many have said from within all factions of the Labour Party, this is not what Labour do, which is true. All political parties who form governments obviously have a position on all policy areas, of course, because they need them. But it's also the case that political parties have a set of core principles upon which they are built. For Labour, by far and away the biggest is backing those who provide the labour in our economy. Clues in the name, really. A policy which makes it harder to find work or remain in work is insane. It's also economically mad. Something that reduces your chances of getting into work when there are unfilled vacancies is counterproductive. And there are knock-on effects as well. It doesn't just affect people with disabilities. One person made the really good point that mobility would be affected. So there are lots of disabled people who can drive themselves. They can drive themselves to work. They don't need a taxi, but they do need adaptations to their cars. Well, if you restrict the funding for this, they can't afford them. So not only do you make it harder for them to be able to drive themselves and therefore work at longer range, you also hit the already suffering car industry. And if that happens, you get job losses there as a result. What happens then? You give Reform UK more votes because they thrive on blue-collar workers not being in stable or well-paid employment. But it looks like this ridiculous decision will be shelved, as I'd hoped the last time I discussed this. It seems that Labour MPs collectively have pushed back. I saw The Guardian describe this as a humiliating U-turn. It's not. If they'd announced the policy and then changed it before a vote, that would be awkward. If they'd put this to a vote and lost, that would have been humiliating. Changing a policy that was never formally announced and was therefore only technically a proposal on an ideas board is not humiliating. If Badenoch tries to bring it up in PMQs, which of course she will, I don't think Starmer need have any difficulty. If she tries to attack him for going where even the Conservatives would not, or being held hostage to his own party, the responses are easy. First, he can go in hard by pointing out that the government faces incredibly tough choices because the Tories left the country's finances in a shocking state. And once again, he can mention the £22 billion black hole, which they concealed from the OBR. He likes talking about that, which for those who keep denying reality in the chat, the OBR published a report confirming. Now, they didn't say it was 22 billion. The precise figure is quibbled over. That depends on your point of view. But they do say that, yes, the Tories concealed many billions of pounds missing from the finances. Starmer can then easily downplay the U-turn in general by referring to media speculation on something the government never actually announced. And until a policy is announced, it's not actually a policy. It's just one of a range of proposals that a government having to deal with a collapsed economy has to deal with. Now, yes, we know that Starmer and Reeves were happy to go along with this policy. If Labour MPs had not kicked back, they would have done. But officially, that is not what happened. Starmer can easily go on the attack against the Tories if they bring it up, once again use it to beat them with their economic record. You couldn't do that if it was a genuinely humiliating U-turn. Humiliating U-turns are things like getting MPs to vote to disband the Standards Committee and then a couple of days later getting them to vote it back again because of the public backlash. Or taking about 58 days to run a leadership contest to install Liz Truss as Prime Minister and then taking only 49 days to boot her out again. It is not changing a policy proposal before it was even made official. And as I said last week, this actually shows one of the strengths of our parliamentary system. There are pros and cons to all systems, including ours. There's no such thing as a perfect system. But having the executive as an integrated part of the legislature is actually a strength in this case. The government is not Keir Starmer or Starmer and Reeves or even Starmer and his entire cabinet. It's every Labour MP in the House of Commons, even if they're not a minister. And to a lesser extent, I suppose, every Labour member of the House of Lords. And when the leadership has a brain fart, it is for the rest to tell them so. That's one of their jobs. Like a good friend and certainly a good colleague tells you when you're going wrong. This is how the system is supposed to work. It's just that we don't always see it doing so. You know, it's actually a sign of a healthy government. Compare this with the US government, where Republicans in Congress know that some of Trump's policies are deeply damaging to America, even by their own standards. And yet they dare not stand up to him, or close to home. When Tory MPs knew the hard Brexit was an insane policy, but they weren't up for the fight. Here, Labour MPs have said, yeah, this policy's crazy. There isn't actually anything to be said in favour of it. It exists purely to balance the books on an already dubious 5-year forecast, and there are alternatives. And well done to all those who pushed back on it. The pushback shouldn't have been in doubt, ideally, but we see so many cases of governments who do mad things because those who are supposed to act as a check on daft decisions don't do their jobs. Very pleased that the checks worked on this occasion. Hopefully they won't be needed again, but if they are, hopefully they will work again. And finally, for those worried that the news is only that the government are getting ready to U-turn on the basis that they're not denying it, I wouldn't worry about that. Now that the government have left the door wide open for dropping this proposal, the pressure will only grow until it's definitely been dropped. I will just be curious to see what they do instead. They chose this because it seemed the least economically risky option to them, which suggests that the alternatives may not be welcome either. But let's see what comes of it. Until then, a crap policy seems to have been stopped, which is what a functioning government should be like. Yes, better that obviously crap ideas never make it onto the drawing board in the first place, but at least they never made it onto a green paper. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.